Welcome back to our Reddit Deep Dive series, where we take a closer look at some of the posts from Reddit's Bureau of Investigation, as well as other interesting subreddits. As always, I would like to thank our channel members for their continuous support. You can also become a member by clicking the join button. Doing so unlocks the Cold Coffin channel badge that changes over time, as well as the Cold Coffin emotes. You can also support the channel by making sure you're subscribed. But enough of that. Now that that's out the way, let's dive in. Our first post comes from the r/Coinbase subreddit and was posted by the user DazzlingPapaya1142 on September 11th, 2024. I believe my dad is getting scammed. My dad was introduced to Coinbase by someone he knows, and they introduced him to someone else. This person and my dad have been in contact with each other since May, so 4 months now. I don't really know much about investing, but basically, I believe he's put in $100,000 so far, mostly his life savings along with money that he borrowed from his friends, and even $20,000 from this person, into something called Ethereum. He has a DeFi wallet, and these random people come to our house to collect money with a certain banknote number to transfer it to Hong Kong. Before all of this, they made him send photos of himself holding his passport and etc. to some random portal website. The reason I believe he's getting scammed is because the person is being super sketchy and not allowing him to withdraw his money. My dad's friend is getting mad because he wants his money back, and now, my dad will have to sell our car to pay him back. There are 3 people my dad is in contact with, the main person being on WhatsApp, who's this Indian person. We don't know their real name, gender, or nothing. And the other 2 people being on either the Coinbase app or the DeFi wallet app, and another person on Telegram. The person on Telegram, their account is verified, but their user is something like Coinbase Support 8, and this seems really sketchy to me, because why would official personnel have numbers attached to their user? According to Coinbase themselves, Coinbase is not currently active on Telegram, and any entity making claims or representations that they are affiliated with Coinbase Support are unauthorized to do so and should not be trusted. But my dad believes they are official Coinbase Support. 2 weeks ago, my dad went out of state to search for this person after they provided him with just the last name and the address of some store, which cost him a total of $1.5K to get there by plane, etc. Turns out this isn't even a real address. He went all the way there because they weren't replying to any of his messages or picking up any of his calls for multiple days, almost 2 weeks. After 3 days, he came back home and he contacted the person on Telegram, saying he needed to withdraw some money. Immediately, the person on WhatsApp finally responded, making me think that all 3 people he's been talking to are the same person. The person on WhatsApp said that they hadn't responded to him in days because their mother had passed away 2 weeks ago, and that they were now all alone in this world, and some other BS. They told my dad to wait 10 days to withdraw his money. For some reason, my dad believed all of this. He said this person had sent them photos of their mom before, and even said that they knew some celebrity who they considered their uncle, and took a photo of the uncle inside their house, which is literally a photo of 2 Indian guys standing in a party venue with a whole stage behind them. So I know for a fact that it's not someone's house. It's been 8 days now. If only that person had responded earlier, then my dad would have at least not had to spend $1.5K. I've tried explaining to my dad a million times that this is a scam, but he won't believe me, and he's still convinced that they're going to let him withdraw the money. It's been 8 days, and this person's WhatsApp security code changed. I'm not sure what that indicates. I'm 99.99% sure this is all a scam, right? If I remember any other details, I'll include them. Please help. And to anyone asking why my dad fell for this, he's an older person, and many people have taken advantage of him before, and he doesn't know anything about investing. He thinks there are good people who will help him make money so he can buy a house. I just found out about all of this. Unfortunately, when it comes to scams, the older generation is frequently targeted. Like the OP said, older people are less familiar with online investing, and especially crypto, and that makes them the perfect targets for scammers. Most of the time, these scammers will have their victims go to a nearby store and purchase large amounts of gift cards, which they then get access to. But in the OP's case, it appears that these people are actually going to their father's home. Gilpin MTBQ would appropriately say this: "This is a pig butchering scam. Your dad needs to cease all contact and contact the police, but the money's gone." Pig butchering, as described on trendmicro.com, is a type of investment fraud that lures individuals into investing their money in seemingly legitimate and profitable ventures. Typically, the scammers promise high investment returns within a short period. Pig-butchering scammers often use fake images and impressive yet fraudulent investment portfolios to convince victims of the legitimacy of their schemes. Once victims are hooked and have invested a significant amount of money, the scammers suddenly disappear, leaving the victims with no way to recover their funds. The term pig butchering is derived from the idea that the scammers fatten up their victims with the promise of lucrative returns before slaughtering them for their money. This sounds exactly like what the OP has described. And now, in the age of crypto with its anonymity, scammers have even more avenues of attack. But thankfully, there are ways to protect yourself. One way, for example, would be using a service like Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Now, more than ever, it's really important to talk about protecting your identity, because hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from national public data, which provides information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others who perform background checks. This includes your full name, your date of birth, your address, social security number, and even any alternate names you may go by. And to make it worse, some of the members of the hacking group have reportedly been releasing this information for free online. If you weren't taking precautions to secure your personal data, then this should be a huge wake-up call, because you've never been more vulnerable than right now. When I first heard of this, I was terrified, but then I remembered that I use Aura, which made me feel a lot better, because I knew that if my information was included in the breach, that they were already working hard to remove it and to protect me. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security on the dark web. They quickly notify me if anyone has tried to use this information to access my credit or bank accounts. And, in the worst case scenario that somebody does steal my identity, their identity theft insurance will give me up to $5 million. They also provide a bunch of other features that help keep you safe online, all within a single app. You can use my link, aura.com/coldcoffin, to try it for free for 14 days. Which is enough time for Aura to find out if your personal data has been exposed. I highly recommend that you do this right now, because not only is national public data not going to do anything to help you, they probably won't even face any repercussions for this leak. I'm not leaving myself or my family vulnerable, and if you don't want to either, go to aura.com/coldcoffin to try it risk-free for 2 whole weeks. And now, back to the video. 11 days later, ROP came back with this update. Hello everyone, this is an update I'm making on the post I made here a couple of days ago. Thank you so much to everyone who gave me input. It's helped a lot during these hard times. So basically, I've learned a lot more information and my dad did get scammed out of his 100K. I don't just believe it. I 100% know. We all know now. My dad finally admitted that it was a woman. I'm putting this in quotation marks because who knows who is actually behind this scheme, who was messaging him, and his friend didn't introduce him to this woman or Coinbase. This woman had messaged my dad through Facebook, and that's where everything started. So now my dad went to see my cousin who is a tech expert. My dad has photos of the woman, and my cousin used them to find information on her. He found out that she is an Indian model based in Delhi, in her late 30s, early 40s. He also found out her name, but I'm not going to include that because the scammer could have just been using her photos. It also turns out that the wallet was fake, as many of you guys had explained, and there wasn't any actual money in it. I had explained this to my dad around a week ago, and that he wasn't actually in DeFi Wallet, but in another tab in the app. I don't know why the app has this feature. I think it makes it easy for someone to get exploited. I had to push my dad for answers. I kept asking him to show me the actual wallet, but he got mad, and said there was nothing in there, and that the money could only be seen through the tab. This literally proved that he was getting scammed. And my cousin also explained the same thing to him. My cousin asked why my dad didn't believe me. We're going to the authorities. We've been scared for so long that they might hurt us if we reported them, but they have to be reported. We have footage of the 3 people who came and took the money in person, plus one of the scammers left the bill with the same identification number as the other ones. I hope somehow we can get our money back, although I think there is a very, very slim chance of that happening. If you know anyone who is older, please make sure that this doesn't happen to them. Even if you believe it won't happen, it might, and it's always better to be on the safer side. This happened to us, and I wouldn't want anyone else having to experience this. Please, Don't get involved in things you don't know about. Cryptocurrency isn't a game. I will update you guys again in the future. That's all I have to say for now. At the very least, the OP knows exactly what is going on now, though unfortunately, as they stated, the likelihood of getting the money back is very low. It's extra sad because this was their father's life savings. But scammers do not care if you're down to your last dollar or in the negative. They only want the money. And if these people have actually been to the father's home, then that adds an extra layer of danger. I did check the OP's profile, and there have been no further updates. It's likely that there won't be any for quite some time, especially if this is an ongoing investigation. Unfortunately, scammers are quick to disappear, but at the very least, the OP was able to get footage of them, assuming that the people who picked up the money are the actual scammers and not some middlemen. In the event that you or somebody you know is going through something similar, the best option is to cease all contact and immediately get in touch with the police. You can also contact the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI's Internet Crimes Complaint Center, and of course, your bank. Our next post comes from a Redditor named Kitsune Core, and it was posted on September 20th, 2024. I might have heard someone die last night. I live off a very out-of-the-way road, in front of a massive rock quarry, and right by the woods. Last night at about 11:15, my wife and I were sitting in our driveway stargazing. We heard a woman screaming very loudly, "Please help me," and other stuff I couldn't make out, I think, and start sobbing. I don't think it was anyone messing with us. It sounded very, very real. We bolted inside and left our dogs out in our panic. I called the police and they said they'd send someone out. After a little while, we grabbed our dogs very fast and ran back inside. When we did this, I think I heard more screaming, and my wife thinks they'd heard a gunshot, so we called the police again. Earlier in the night, we'd seen an ATV with a man and a woman, and when we got our dogs, my wife said they'd heard the ATV again. We haven't heard anything back. We called again to see if anything had happened, and they said that the police drove out here but found nothing. I've been stressing out all day. I couldn't sleep until like 3 or 4 in the morning. I can still hear her screaming, replaying over and over and over. I don't know what to do, or if I can even do anything. I was thinking about calling the police back out here to talk to us, and maybe check the woods with us, but I don't know if that's a good idea. I feel haunted. Understandably, the OP was troubled by what they had heard, either due to the sheer horror of the possibility of it being real, or the inability to help. Either way, I can see how this would affect someone. If that was really a woman calling for help, then it's also possible that the person who did this to her might still be out there. At least the police did say that they found nothing, but then again, that's not always reassuring. One user, Platyfwop, would comment this: I would keep an eye on missing persons reports in your area. If a woman is reported missing, I would call the lead investigator with the tip. I probably wouldn't go investigating the woods myself for a variety of reasons. Try to get some sleep. You did the right thing, and hopefully, it's not what it sounded like. Edit. Write down your timeline while it's still fresh, as many details as you can remember, just in case it comes in handy for the police later. This is good advice, although missing person reports are not always filed as soon as one might hope, so the OP could be waiting for an undefined amount of time. Another user, Kits8888, would say this: That's awful. I would be persistent with the police, especially today. What if someone is out there and injured and unable to move? If that fails, do you know anyone with a drone? The OP would reply back, Yep, that's what's been terrifying me about the fact that they found nothing. I doubt they went into the woods or did much more than drive around, so I fully believe there could be a woman out there very, very hurt, or dead. We also live close to a place where someone was found literally burned to death. I do know someone that I think has a drone actually, so that's a good idea. I did try to look for the story that the OP was mentioning about a person being burned alive, but was unable to do so with how vague the description was. They did, however, mention in a later comment that it was a group of 5 who had committed the act. Other commenters would advise the OP to check on Facebook and other forms of social media, but despite the efforts, no reports had been found at all. Which brings us to the OP's second post, which came 2 days after the original. This is an update a lot of you may not like, just as a warning. As I stated, the police did come out after we called, and they drove around but didn't find anything. We haven't heard any news. There have been no new missing person reports, no new DV reports, and absolutely nothing on local social media, or anywhere. Absolutely nothing. The ATV and possible gunshot were likely unrelated. We live in the Deep South, and we hear ATVs and guns very, very often. My wife and I are both Native American, coming from different tribes. We have always been connected to the metaphysical and spiritual world for lots of reasons. That included, we have very, very strong reason to believe that what we heard was something that we can't mention directly. This is not the first time we have had potential encounters with this thing. My wife, coming from a tribe in which this entity originates, has been stalked by this thing for years. I didn't want to think it was related to the woman we heard, because while I believe in the metaphysical, I tried to go with logical conclusions first, and I desperately wanted there to be a woman that did end up okay. Still, this was a possibility we kept in the back of our minds. Well, we have another Native American and spiritual friend that we were venting about the situation to from the second it happened. This friend has spirits that they contact often, and we offhandedly mentioned that we would appreciate it if any of them could scope out our surroundings to see if anything was going on. They sent one of these spirits to watch us last night and put protection spells on us. Last night, my wife made comments about seeing what looked like bugs in the corner of their eye that disappeared every time they looked. I made a lighthearted comment about how that might have been our spirit friend, and told our friend about it as well. As it turns out, it was not our spirit friend. In fact, he said he saw it as well. The details we were told is that he didn't have to go far to find a dark presence strongly attached to one of us that seemed very possessive of my wife. The bugs my wife saw were the dark presence, which he also guessed seemed more feminine in energy. What he said was that it looked humanoid, but skeletal, with charred black skin that may be a sort of projection of the dark energy. For those of you that know what I'm talking about, you will know that description matches up very well. They also like to mask as owls, which we've been hearing a lot about lately. There are a lot of things that line up, and a lot of small pieces that are clicking together. There is a part of me that is worried about it possibly being a real woman, but I just don't think it is anymore. I know this isn't the update you guys are wanting. I'm sorry. I'm still willing to share any information I can that you guys are interested in, but I feel I should move to a different sub if I decide to make any more posts about this. While this wasn't the update we expected, I'm not one to talk down on another person's beliefs. So, we'll try to figure out what the OP believes they may have encountered. But first, there was a commenter who said this. I was camping with a friend once upon a time. We set up in the day and came back at night. Out of the deep brush came what sounded like a woman screaming at the top of her lungs. But it went on for 10 minutes. We packed up and slept by the road. Later that summer, a family of bobcats were discovered in the camping area. It was weird until we found out the cause. Another user would also say, coyotes also sound like a woman being murdered. So I thought it would be a good idea to see what these animals sounded like. First, the bobcat. And now the coyotes. After listening to both, you could see how someone might hear this and believe that there is a woman screaming for help. But the OP had stated that the voice said, "Please help me," and furthermore, they would reply to the commenters and say, "Not an animal, the words were way too distinct." If true, either this was really a woman in distress, or the metaphysical being the OP described. The first thing I thought about was the Navajo legend of the Skinwalker. According to the legends, Skinwalkers are shape-shifting supernatural beings that were at one point regular people. These people followed the witchery way, which is the dark side of Navajo witchcraft, whereas the medicine men practiced the good side of Navajo witchcraft. Quoted from legendsofamerica.com, to become a Skinwalker, he or she must be initiated by a secret society that requires the evilest of deeds, the killing of a close family member, most often a sibling. But the OP also mentions the owls, which may come from the legend of the Tata Klaa, or the owl woman monster. Pardon my pronunciation. These beings are witches who disguise themselves as owls, and possess the ability to mimic their prey's language in order to lure them in. I think this fits better with the description of what the OP believes they had encountered. But unfortunately, this is where the trail ends. To my knowledge, there is still no reported missing woman, and no evidence of an attack found by the police. So that begs the question, was there really a missing woman screaming for help? Or could it have been something else? On August 11th, 2024, user Kindly Goku came to the RBI subreddit with this post. Was I kidnapped as a child? I believe I may have been kidnapped when I was little. There's a part of my life that is completely blank in my mind. I don't remember anything from the time I was 5 to 6. I remember things from when I was 3 to 4. I'm currently 21. The only thing that I remember from the time of 5 to 6 is myself crying in a dark room with only a TV with a few old VHS tapes. Every time I asked my mother about it, she would always change the topic and never answer me. She passed last year, so I never got a definitive answer. I tried searching my name on Google, but nothing shows up. I've been trying to get in contact with family members from around the time, but either they don't have social media or don't reply to my messages on Messenger. There are a few more family members I'll try to get in contact with. My grandmother on my mom's side never met my dad. She doesn't have social media or a cell phone, but I know where she lives, and I'm planning to send her a letter to tell her that I'm planning on a visit. It's been 4 years since I've seen her. I know she's alive because I saw her in a picture posted by a younger cousin last week. I'll ask her what happened, because she was living with my mother and I for about 3 years from ages 4 to 7. If anyone would know, she would. What exactly happened to me? The top comment came from a user named CrazyBoard4210. Maybe you were put in foster care for a time. This could explain why the OP's memory is so hazy during this period, and why the OP's mother was hesitant to talk about it. Another user, named Jomo Chicago, would also back this theory up with their personal experience. This happened to me, and I remember very little of it, though I have very clear memories of before and after that time. I didn't even know everywhere I had lived until I researched it and got answers. Finally, 40 years afterwards, my family refused to discuss it. It was due to one parent almost dying and being hospitalized for months and months. Other commenters seemed to believe in this theory as well, and many asked the OP about their relationship with their mother. But a little over 2 weeks later, the OP came back with answers after visiting their grandmother. I visited my grandmother yesterday. I'm staying in her guest room, and she told me what happened. My uncle was a severe drug addict and was always trying to get high. It turns out I was indeed kidnapped by him in broad daylight. He picked me up in front of the yard, and multiple neighbors saw him. She told me that I was missing for a single afternoon because my uncle was dumb enough to bring me to his home, which was 20 minutes from town. Apparently, he planned to anonymously ransom me for money for cocaine or sell me to whoever. Since this happened in a small town in the 2000s, and everything was resolved quickly, there was not much news coverage, aside from a small mention in the local newspaper. So yeah, she also said she disowned him as her son, and the last she heard, he got arrested for indecent exposure over in South Dakota. Well, the OP's suspicions were correct, just maybe not in the way they were expecting. Thankfully, it was only one afternoon, but the experience as a child must have been traumatizing, enough that years down the line the OP still thought about it and sought out the truth. On August 26, 2024, Reddit user Chris A. Pureland came to the RBI with an interesting post. There's some used cooking oil trafficking rings in my neck of the woods, Birmingham, Alabama. No, the situation may not seem so dire, though the corner crime affects tons of businesses as well as overall city systems. Does a ton of damage, more than many may realize. Was wondering if this is a crime in other places near the state of Alabama or elsewhere. Could this be tied to a certain group or organization? Any advice or words would be appreciated. The two frequent groups of acquaintance made known to me seems to be both Japanese as well as Latino. The members seem to be somewhat professional, though unbothered and a bit cocky because this is practically a victimless crime, and they know it. Authorities not batting an eye, not too surprising in my neck of the woods. What's new? So kind of trying to take action in our own hands. Do your stuff, RBI. Like, do you have any advice or comment is appreciated. The initial reaction from the sub was that this person could potentially be a bot because of the format in which they posted. But the used cooking oil black market is a real thing. User Perky Hedge Witch would link an article that explained what was very likely going on. To summarize, the article informs us that there are groups of people, in the article's case from China, who go to restaurants and steal their used cooking oil so that it can be sold to recycling centers that then use said oil, recycle it, and turn it into biodiesel. Typically, this process happens legally by legitimate companies contracted by restaurants, but because this can be easily overlooked by restaurant staff unless they are very watchful of their security cameras and service scheduling, people trying to take advantage can easily get away with stealing the used oil. The thieves often show up with all of the proper equipment, making them appear legitimate to unsuspecting staff. This is very likely what is happening, and the next day, the OP would provide this update. So, I made a previous post discussing this, though I wasn't that clear, and yeah, I could see how I came off as a bot. Last Monday it was me, my brother, and a work colleague. We were just chilling after a long night. We were outside near my brother's girlfriend's house. Don't want to mention any names or local details due to privacy, as well as sensitivity regarding the situation. She lives in a housing complex that was positioned on the slouch of a hill, like right in the backyard proximity of the restaurant we worked. It's a chicken and waffle joint. I'm actually relatively new. My brother got me the gig, though I'm familiar with the boss as well as the staff who works there. I became aware that we had an issue about groups or someone stealing our used cooking oil from the oil disposal located just near the dumpster on the side of the building. We have a pretty decent-sized parking lot for customers and employees. When entering the establishment, the oil disposal unit is located at the left side of the building. The boss man told us that he had it all on camera, though the whole trick is to catch them in the act because it seems that would be the only way for authorities to take it seriously, like plant a sting or something. So back to Monday, the three of us were just chilling. I was on my laptop somehow picking up Wi-Fi. We were just across the street from her house at an old pawn shop where there is a gated fence with stairs that led down to the parking lot of the restaurant we worked. Anyway, we kept on noticing the passing of this white truck up and down the hill road. Eventually it stopped, and it turned out to be a guy that knew our boss who worked for the authority that managed the transportation of cooking oil from several establishments. Pretty sure it's like a government-run organization. Anyway, he mentioned several instances of theft as well as arrests made concerning the crime. Part of his line of work was to drive from county to county, and maybe even state to state, to observe certain establishments that were being targeted. Basically, he was somewhat taking matters into his own hands. He showed us photos of camera footage showcasing what appeared to be an Asian male with his son just stealing the cooking oil from a local restaurant without a care in the world. I mean, the father was even smiling to the camera, as he/they knew that they could get away with it. The theft of oil can come off as practically a victimless crime depending on the attention of the authorities, as well as seen as a corner crime where individuals themselves find that they must conclude with taking matters into their own hands. The agent we talked to mentioned the confrontation with him and the Asian father, who he confirmed was Japanese, where he confirmed that they disguised their crime using official fraud. The father had fake ID as well as equipment. The agent became very suspicious and confronted the father, who seemed equally confrontative, but eventually chose to back off. So it seems like something that they think they may have the right to do. The agent also mentioned the group of Latino men who were responsible for several hits in many counties in Alabama and elsewhere, though he highlighted an out-of-state arrest made in August of 2024 in Cartersville. Concerning the arrests of 4 perps undergoing the same crime, he mentioned that it is tied to a criminal organization/ring. He confirmed that this was the case, which I'll link here. P.S. I don't know too much detail concerning the legal matters of the situation, as I am still new to it all, though I am a fluent netizen online. Just thought if I could acquire some advice/tips it would be helpful. It's hard to say if this is all tied to a criminal ring or organization, or just a handful of shady restaurants even themselves thinking they can be sneaky and not wanting to pay for oil. Maybe a little bit of both, though the agent we talked to seems a bit obsessive, which is understandable concerning his line of work, as the crime both affects his assets as well as transactions. Usually the government-run department is the authority responsible for transporting the used cooking oil from disposal. In situations like with my boss, he gets a check for the restaurant from said department, which this is affected. The illegal trafficking of used cooking oil can generally affect the business of local areas not just financially, though with the area, health-wise also. Legally, the reuse of oil that has already been used to its full qualified potential can cause health concerns, as well as being unregulated, not presided over by a collaborative company or organization due to it being disposed oil from other restaurants, unaffiliated. Yeah, that's illegal. Be like if I committed Grand Theft Auto on a car and tried to sell it to use it elsewhere. Well, it's still a stolen car, right? Aside from some grammar mistakes, it does look like this user is probably not a bot. But the OP does lean more to the idea that the oil thieves are stealing the used oil to reuse in other restaurants. User Wicked Little Thing would comment, "This is so crazy. And if they're stealing it for their own restaurant, it could seriously get someone sick if the grease isn't processed and has contaminants, and so on." The OP would reply back, "Yeah, I think the department I mentioned is in charge of reprocessing the oil for cooking grade to be redistributed and regulated to local restaurants. Either if they are stealing it to use in their restaurant, or are selling it illegally to unknowing restaurants, I could see how it could be a health risk, depending on if they themselves don't make any measures to process it themselves, which I doubt they know how to do." While I find this very gross to think about, personally, I don't believe this is the case. It would be much more profitable to sell to a recycling center than to sell it cheaply to other restaurants. Unless they have a way of processing it themselves, the used oil will almost always be obviously used. It would take a very shady restaurant to accept this oil, and if you're going to have it processed anyway, it would be easier to just sell it to the recycling center, as they would be the ones to process it. There are real consequences caused by the used oil black market. Oil spills can occur, polluting water sources, the restaurants take financial hits, and of course, the overall quality control. In some cases, the oil disposal companies do include anti-theft services and carefully monitor everything to ensure that the used oil is not being stolen. I believe this is who the OP may have run into. Hopefully, the authorities are or soon get involved. I will keep an eye out for any updates in the near future. But that is where the story ends. Our final post came from the user Rose Quartz Raptor and was posted on September 22nd, 2024. My apartment house has a strange, sickening smell every few months that has forced me out and ill. No professional can figure out where it is coming from. This has been going on since I moved in the beginning of 2021. I apologize, this will be a long post, so I'll bold the important parts. The layout is a townhouse separated into 3 separate units located in a large city, mostly empty, but occasionally used by the landlord's sons, the ground, my apartment, and upstairs, a family of 7. It's on the corner of an intersection near a traffic light, a bus stop right outside my window, and next to the house is a Bet Kevarat. On the other side and in front are just more houses along the street. The scent is a mixture of what smells like to me and some others, a mix of burnt plastic and nail polish remover. The smell was initially in the hallway. It always made me feel nauseous, but I could tolerate it enough in the hall, keeping my mask on until I got inside my apartment. It would appear every few months, stay for 2 to 3 months, go away for another 2 to 3 months, then come back and repeat. Then in March of this year, the smell appeared inside my bathroom. My landlord was actually quick to try and help, but each day I was there I was becoming sicker and sicker, with no other place to go unless I wanted to travel hours away. He took the ceiling tiles down and the smell was even stronger, latching itself into the tiles and staining them with red/brown blotches, one of which I have saved a piece of. Doing that also spread the smell out to my whole apartment, the hall, and the basement apartment. The smell was extremely clingy. It latches itself onto everything, no matter the material. I got it in my hair, my clothes, all my belongings, and even stuff inside my refrigerator and closed drawers. I became extremely ill, vomiting, and had to leave. Traveling 2 states over with family where I have still been at all these months without my belongings or answers. Over all these months, the landlord has been keeping me updated with photos and mailing me report files of every company/person he has called to try and solve the issue. He's called 2 different plumbers, 3 electricians, a mold inspector, and a VOC tester. None of them recognize the smell or can figure it out. The mold report came back good/acceptable. When it started in March, I was in the environment for 11 days, and after the landlord took the ceiling out, some weird red/brown liquid started dripping down. The conclusion I have come to is drugs by the upstairs neighbors. My initial thought was that they were doing something in the hallway, then changed to doing it in their bathroom since it's right over mine. I ordered a $10 drug swab test from Amazon. I know these things can be faulty, but I was curious. So I swabbed the piece of tile sample I took, and it showed it was positive for meth and fent. Whenever I bring the possibility of it being drugs, my landlord becomes visually uncomfortable and adamant it's not. I'm guessing because the other tenants must have threatened him since they threatened me the second I moved in there. I was very confused at the time, as I was not engaging in just taking the trash out. They got in my face and said some strange things, telling me they own the place and decide what goes on around here, and that I'm never to even look at them. I secretly called at the VOC company and asked them what they thought, and if they had ever been in an environment before with the same results this house got where it turned out to be drugs. The man said he had never had a case like that, and if the neighbors were cooking, then I would see them wearing masks and hazmat suits, no? He also pointed out how the landlord did not let them enter the other apartment to test, however. He has a point about the suits, but then again, people sometimes lack common sense. So at this point I have no choice but to move out, which I really don't want to do because I love the location, and it's perfect for me as a disabled person who can't drive. Defeated, I contacted a professional cleaning company that usually works with hoarders, asking them if they had any kind of fogger or machine they could let off in my apartment to try to get the smell out of my belongings, as I've washed my clothes 4 times to get the smell out of the ones I took from the apartment. And then, nothing works to remove the smell of any sort of leathery or wire-like material, leaving me having to replace my shoes and jackets, etc. I travel back to my apartment for the day to meet with the cleaner so he can investigate. First thing he asks is if it's possible the neighbors can be cooking. The landlord immediately says no. I also have a private conversation with the cleaner about the incidents, and he's going to let off a drug neutralizer regardless, and then an odor-removing treatment. So even though it's probably drugs, there's still no proof of it, and there's no way I can get 100% concrete proof of it without getting in that upstairs apartment or getting the authorities involved, which is not safe for me to do. But let's pretend it's not drugs since we still don't really know. Is there any other possible explanation on what could be causing an intermediate smell every 2 to 3 months to appear on a property? A smell like burnt plastic and nail polish remover that clings to all material and leaves a strange residue on it? I'm hoping there's another explanation, an innocent one that can be easily solved, something that maybe we wouldn't normally think of, so that this can be solved and I can stay in my apartment and go back, finding the source. Thank you all for reading this. I'm welcoming any and all ideas. One of the first comments came from a user named Unlucky Kentucky. Someone making batches of crank or tons of pop bottles shake and bake meth. The burning plastic and acetone smell describes the bathtub crank I made/did 25 years ago. Then you described some very methed up behavior from the neighbors in the apartment above yours. You live beneath crystal methany and methu. Shake and bake is a method that involves putting all of the ingredients used to make the chemical into a plastic bottle and shaking it vigorously until a reaction occurs. This can be very dangerous as the fumes from the chemicals can explode, not to mention that the fumes are toxic themselves. But seeing as how the OP has already gotten a positive test result as well as the paranoid and threatening behavior of the upstairs residents, it's safe to assume that this is probably what's happening. Further down, the OP would provide this update that included images of the substance as well as the VOC test results. Edit to add, or even ideas on other people/companies that can come into my apartment to prove it is drugs without having to go upstairs or get authorities involved. The VOC test findings done in July when the smell was not present. Substance leaking in the bathroom. Dried substance on the ceiling tile. Massively called around to try and get it tested, even universities, and the cheapest I could find would cost me $2,000, and the landlord will not cover it. I'm no Walter White, but I did look at the VOC test results and noticed that the acetone levels were higher than the average. According to the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, or the ATSDR, the average levels of acetone inside a home is around 8 ppb, or 8 per billion parts of air. In the OP's case, these levels are twice as high as the average, and acetone is used in the production of meth, but other chemicals that are used are not listed on this report. One explanation could maybe be a home nail salon operation, which would still be illegal if the correct permits were not there. But this is just me reaching for a better reason for the elevated acetone levels. We can also see in the other images that there is a reddish-orange substance leaking into the OP's apartment. This could be iodine, which is used for smaller production operations, according to justice.gov. Small-scale methamphetamine producers who are unable to obtain iodine crystals occasionally produce them from iodine tincture by mixing iodine tincture with hydrogen peroxide. This is a time-consuming process that yields a very small amount of iodine crystals in relation to the amount of tincture and hydrogen peroxide used. Further down, the OP provided another update. Thank you for all the comments, help, and insight. I'm reading them all, I promise. I see a lot of questioning as to why I don't want to go to the police about this. As I mentioned, these people have already threatened me when I moved in. I'm the only other tenant in that building besides when the landlord's son comes every so often, and it would be obvious it is me. I'm physically, neurologically, and visually disabled, meaning I don't have the correct physical ability and sight to defend myself properly. This is also a family of 7, 5 kids and their parents. If the police get involved, and it turns out to be drugs, they get their kids taken away. That puts a huge target on my back. Yes, according to my landlord, Child Protective Services is already involved with them up there, so I don't want to get into that too. And I may be 2 states away, but you simply don't know what these people know, how big their drug ring is, if it is drugs, etc. In a fantasy, I'm hoping this could be something else other than drugs and the problem gets taken care of, because I want to move back there due to the location. It's good for me for multiple reasons besides just having a bus stop outside. It's a location where I can actually 90% take care of myself, whereas in other places I have to rely on other people to drive me around and work my doctor's appointments around their schedules. The landlord is not making me pay for these months I've been out of it, and he told me he still won't have me pay rent until either I find a new place or they take care of the problem and I can come back. He's also claiming that he's working on evicting them upstairs, which is what I'm hoping will happen, but I also need to find a source of this smell. I'm refusing to go back there unless it's 100% figured out and destroyed, but my hopes aren't high. And unfortunately, I won't be able to move until March 2025 due to finances. I can understand the OP's concerns about these people. They have already threatened them, and if CPS is already involved, then contacting the authorities could very well lead to the children being removed from their parents. That said, if the children are in an environment where drugs are being made, then calling the authorities is the only correct course of action. If the upstairs residents are heavy meth users, they might lash out, but it's not likely they're very smart or have the resources to find the OP 2 states away. I do, however, appreciate the landlord's efforts to help the OP, and even going as far as to not charge them for the time that they have not been living on the property, which is not something many landlords would be willing to do. Unfortunately, the eviction process can be long and dramatic, so the OP's only real option at this point is to wait and hope that the landlord can evict the upstairs residents quickly so that the source of the chemical smells can be identified and taken care of. Until then, it's just a waiting game, and that's where this story ends. But I am curious to hear your thoughts. Could this smell have been the result of a home meth lab, or could there be another legal explanation? If you made it this far, leave a like. And if you want to get to know me a bit better, turn on your post notifications so that you don't miss out on the live streams. This is where you can chat with me directly, get updates on future uploads, and hang out with the growing chat community. But that's all for this video. Have a happy Halloween, and as always, thanks for watching.